First thing you notice is the wind. It moves across the old airfield in long, straight lines. The kind of wind that doesn't swirl or drift, but travels with purpose, as if following the same paths the planes once took. The concrete beneath you is cracked now, softened by moss and time, but some of the lines of the runway are still there, faded, broken, but unmistakable. You start walking along one of them. The airfield is huge, too big, too open, too empty for a place this close to the city. Every sound feels exposed. Your footsteps don't echo the way they should. They disappear into the wind, swallowed by the space around you. Halfway down the runway, you hear it. Metallic clang, sharp, sudden, coming from somewhere out in the concrete. You stop. The wind keeps moving. The field stays empty. You take another step and the sound returns. Not closer, not farther, just present. Like something heavy shifting its weight. Like a hangar door settling. Like a piece of metal reacting to a pressure change that shouldn't exist. There's no one out here. No planes, no crews, just the remnants of a base that once trained pilots for war, now open to the sky and the weather and the long, slow process of forgetting. You keep walking, following the runway line the way kids once followed it on bikes, tracing a path that used to mean something. The wind pushes against your back, steady and cold, and for a moment you feel it. The sense that the field isn't as empty as it looks. A presence, not close, not watching, just aware. Magnuson Park doesn't hide its history. It leaves it out in the open, in the concrete, in the hangars, in the long stretches of space where sound travels too far and the wind moves like memory. Tonight, we're stepping onto the old Naval Air Station, into the runways, the barracks, the hangars, and the forgotten corners where the echoes don't come from the dark. They come from the open air. The Duwamish knew this water long before the Navy ever arrived. They called the lake Hachu, the Big Lake, and the people who lived along its shores were the Hachu-Apch, the people of the Big Lake. Their canoe routes and seasonal camps shaped the shoreline for generations before Sandpoint became a military outpost. The second layer arrived in the early 20th century, when aviation was still new and Seattle was trying to define its place in the world. In 1920, the U.S. Navy chose this stretch of shoreline for a new air station. The land was cleared, leveled, and reshaped into something rigid and geometric. Runways, hangars, barracks, fuel depots, and long concrete aprons built for the weight of military aircraft. Sandpoint Naval Air Station became one of the most important aviation hubs in the region. Pilots trained here, crews lived here, aircraft took off and landed in tight formation, their engines shaking the ground. During World War II, the base operated around the clock, a constant cycle of drills, flights, and maintenance. The runways were alive with motion, noise, and purpose. After the war, the base shifted into Cold War operations. Patrol planes flew long routes over the Pacific. Training continued. The barracks filled and emptied with each new wave of personnel. But slowly, the activity began to fade. By the 1970s, the Navy no longer needed the air station, the way it once had. Buildings were decommissioned, hangars were locked, the runways grew quieter. And then eventually, the base closed. What remained was a landscape built for precision and discipline, suddenly empty, exposed, and strangely vulnerable. The runways stretched out across the peninsula with no planes to use them. The hangars stood like hollow shells. The barracks felt abandoned in a way that didn't match the rest of the city. It was a place designed for motion, not holding still. In the decades that followed, the transformation into Magnuson Park began. Some buildings were demolished, others were repurposed. The runways were torn up piece by piece, leaving behind fragments of concrete and faint lines that only people who remembered the old base could still trace. The land softened, grass grew where aircraft once taxied, the shoreline opened to the public. But the bones of the base never really disappeared. The massive hangars still stand, their doors towering over the park. The old officer housing remains tucked into the trees. The bunkers and storage buildings sit half hidden along the paths. Even the wind feels different here, straight, cold, and directional, as if still following the routes laid out a century ago. Magnuson Park isn't a place where the past is buried. It's a place where the past is visible in every line of concrete, every abandoned structure, every echo that travels too far across the open field. A base built for war, a park built on its bones, and a landscape that remembers both. Magnuson Park doesn't unfold the way most parks do. There's no gentle transition from city to green space, no soft boundary. Instead, the landscape opens all up all at once. A sudden expanse of concrete, grass, and sky that feels too large for the neighborhood around it. The wind moves in long, straight lines, following paths laid out a century ago. And the scale of the place hits you before anything else. If you start at the old airfield, the first thing you notice is the space. The runways are faded now, broken by grass and time, but they still stretch out in front of you like a memory the land refuses to let go of. Kids used to ride their bikes along these lines, tracing the paths where aircraft once taxied. Even now, walking them feels like stepping into a ghost of motion. A place built for speed, now holding perfectly still. The concrete is cracked, softened at the edges, but the geometry remains. Straight lines, hard angles, a grid designed for precision. The wind moves across with purpose, pushing against your back, carrying sound farther than it should. The dog barking on the far side of the field echoes like it's coming from somewhere much closer. Footsteps vanish into open air. Farther north, the hangars rise out of the landscape like enormous metal cliffs. Their doors tower above you, rusted at seams, heavy enough to feel immovable, even when they're open. Inside, the air changes. It's cool. It stills. Even sound becomes sharper. A cough, a footstep, the scrape of shoes on concrete. The space is so large that echoes return out of sync, as if the building is answering back a moment too late. Outside the hangars, the old barracks sit in long rows. Their windows dark, their doors locked. Some have been repurposed, others remained untouched. Their paint peeling, the roofs sagging, slightly under decades of weather. Walking past them, you get the sense of a place that was emptied quickly. Beds stripped, lockers cleared, lights turned off, and then left to the elements. The wind moves through the gaps in the siding, carrying a low, hollow whistle. Beyond the barracks, the officer housing hides among the trees. These buildings feel different, quieter, more domestic, but no less abandoned. The porches sag, the windows stare blankly at the paths. The air here is stiller, the wind broken by the branches overhead. It feels like a neighborhood that never had the chance to become one. Closer to the shoreline, the landscape shifts again. The concrete gives way to grass, then to sand, then to the long, narrow edge of Lake Washington. The water is calm, but the wind is not. It moves across the surface in straight lines, the same way it moves across the airfield. The lake reflects the sky, the hangars, the trees, and sometimes, if you're standing at the right angles, it reflects something else. A figure at the water's edge, a shadow that doesn't match the people around you, a shape that disappears when you look directly at it. Magnuson Park is a place of open spaces and long sight lines, a place where sound travels too far and the wind moves with intention, a place where the path isn't hidden underground, it's laid out in the open, exposed to the weather, slowly fading but never fully gone. A landscape built for motion, a landscape learning how to be still, a landscape that remembers. Magnuson Park's hauntings don't hide in shadows or sealed corridors. They live in the open, in the wind, the concrete, in the long sight lines where a figure can stand 100 yards away and still feel too close. These aren't hauntings of claustrophobia, they're hauntings of exposure. And these are the four most consistent reports. Inside the old hangars, sound behaves in ways that don't match space. A single footstep can return from a wrong direction. A cough can echo twice, once immediately, and once a heartbeat later, as if someone deeper in the building is responding. People who work in the repurposed hangars say they hear footsteps pacing along the catwalks, a metallic clank from a corner that's empty, the slow creak of a door that hasn't moved in decades. The timing is the strangest part. The echoes don't follow physics. They seem to follow you. A haunting of reply, a haunting of presence in a space too large to see all at once. The old barracks have a reputation among maintenance staff. Even the renovated ones carry the same story. Footsteps moving the length of a hallway, steady and unhurried, as if someone is doing rounds long after the building was emptied. The pattern is always the same. Slow steps, a pause at each doorway, a turn at the end of the hall. The return trip just as steady. No one has ever seen the source. No one has ever heard a door open or close. Just the footsteps, moving with the rhythm of someone who never stopped doing their job. A haunting of routine and of duty. Joggers, dog walkers, and cyclists all describe the same thing. A sudden drop in temperature on the old airfield. Not a breeze or a gust, a pocket of cold. Sharp, still, and unmistakable. It happens on warm days, happens on windless days, it happens in the exact same place. People say it feels like walking through a wake of something that just passed by. Something large, fast, and invisible. A shadow of motion in a place built for speed. Some describe it as the airfield remembering what it was made for. Others say it feels like someone walking right through them. A haunting of movement, a haunting of absence. Near the lake, especially at dusk, people report seeing a figure standing at the shoreline, always alone, always still, always facing the water. The figure is described as being tall, motionless, dark against the reflection, impossible to approach. When people walk toward it, the figure doesn't fade or drift away. It simply isn't there anymore. One moment present, the next moment gone, as if the lake swallowed the shape whole. Some say it looks like a pilot in silhouette. Others say it looks like someone waiting for a boat that never arrived. A haunting of watching and of waiting. Some haunted places feel heavy. Magnuson Park doesn't. Its hauntings aren't shaped by darkness or confinement. They're shaped by absence, by the long stretches of open space where sound travels too far, and by the wind that moves in straight lines across concrete built for motion. This is a place that remembers what it used to be, even if the city around it has forgotten. When you walk the old airfield, you can still feel the geometry of the base beneath your feet. The runways may be cracked and softened by time, but the lines are still there, faint and stubborn. Kids once followed them on bikes, tracing paths meant for aircraft. Now the wind follows them instead, carrying echoes that don't always belong to the people making them. The hangars remember the noise, the engines, the drills, the constant vibration of a place that never slept. Now they answer back with delayed echoes as if the building itself is trying to recreate the sound of a world that's gone quiet. The barracks remember routine, footsteps, inspections, the rhythm of people who lived by schedules and orders. Even empty, the hallways still hold that pattern. And the shoreline remembers waiting for boats, for planes, for people who never returned. Magnuson Park isn't haunted by tragedy, it's haunted by purpose, by the idea of a place built for precision and discipline, suddenly left to weather and time, by the echo of motion in the landscape learning how to be still. By the way, open space can hold memory just as tightly as any sealed room. Some places remember those echoes, some through shadows. Magnuson Park remembers through space. A base built for war, a park built on its bones, and a landscape that hasn't forgotten either one. Magnuson Park is a place that remembers through space, through wind, through echoes, through the long stretches of concrete where motion used to define everything. It's a haunting shaped by distance, by exposure, by the quiet that settles over a landscape built for noise. But not every haunting needs that much room. Some places hold their history much closer. Some places keep their memories pressed into the ground. Some places feel smaller, lighter, more personal. Not because the land is small, but because the stories are. Just a few miles south of here, along the shoreline of Lake Washington, there's a park that looks peaceful at first glance. Trees, water, open grass. Nothing unusual, nothing that stands out. But beneath that calm is a history far heavier than Magnuson Park's. A place where the buildings are gone, but the land hasn't forgotten what happened inside them. A place where people still hear voices in the trees, where footsteps follow the old paths long after the structures were torn down, where the past feels close enough to touch. Next time, we're going to the site of Martha Washington School for Girls, a place shaped by discipline, isolation, and stories that never fully left the shoreline. Haunting of not of open space, but of memory held